Alright, so if you guys are tuning in for the second video here, on the first video we cleared a rough driveway and a rough staging area for equipment, tools, materials, that sort of thing. So the next move on this job was going to be to widen the driveway at the beginning, just so we can get trucks up here. But we've not been able to get a tree guy in here to take down a couple trees that are right next to the road, right next to high voltage power lines, primary power lines. So until they do that, I cannot clear the front area to widen out the driveway. So instead we're going to go in here. We have plenty of work to do, taking down a whole bunch of trees. There's over 20 trees left that we need to take out that are big, and then there's probably another 30 or 40 small trees. And by big I mean 100 feet tall, 80 to 100 feet tall. Some of them being dead, like that one, super dangerous. All pine, eastern pine, another dangerous tree. But we got a lot of big pine trees that are very, very tall, very straight, good for milling, but very tall and dangerous. So let's not waste any time. We're gonna get right to taking down these trees now that we have a nice area to flop them down and then clean them up in. I have a brush pile started right here. In the last week we've had probably 6 inches of rain, so we haven't been here in about a week or so, and stuff is sticking to the bottom of my shoes, but hopefully the rain has gone away for a while. But nevertheless, we are going to start back here, clean this all up, knock down a few more trees, make another 1 or even 2 stacks of logs, and we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, so two things just happened that are not good. First of all, the camera got knocked over just before I flopped this tree over, so I missed that. Second of all, my track came off of my excavator. One of the links broke. All right, so yeah, we got a problem. So one of the links of the chain broke. That is not a good thing. And it happened right while I was pushing this tree over and I couldn't stop. I had to push the tree, so I was back there when it broke, but now it's up here. So we're gonna have to take this track home. I should have another link for it, but getting the pin out is gonna be a thing. So I don't know. And then of course putting the track back on, that's gonna be a thing. But it is what it is. Okay, so basically what happened was this link broke right here. So it was supposed to be in there just about like that. So I don't think there's any chance that I could weld this and it would stay together. I do actually have special MIG wire that's made for cast iron. I believe this is cast iron. It's either cast iron or cast steel. Either way, I have the correct wire to weld that, but I just don't think that that would hold up very well. This is just a high stress area. If I didn't have another set of tracks, I would probably attempt that because it's really my only other option without having to order parts. But since I have the tracks from my other Samsung that I scrapped a couple months ago, I still have the whole track. The shoes on it are wider than these, so it would be in my best interest to just use parts off of it instead of the whole thing. But definitely in a pinch I could use the whole thing if I needed to. The chain is the same, So being that this is only 2 links away from the master, what I think I'm going to do is just replace from there to the master with parts from another track. So right there is where it broke. Right there is the master. So I think what I'm going to do is just pull the master, cut off the appropriate amount of links, which is 3, from the other one, and then I only have to put 1 pin in and the master to put it back together, instead of a pin here and a pin here that I have to put in. And there's no way that I'm going to press these pins out. I'm not even going to try. It's just a waste of time. And there's no way I'm going to press them back in either. So what I'm going to do is basically have 2 master links. I'm going to take the pin and turn it down on the lathe to just a few thou under what it is right now. So it'll have like kind of a press fit, but not really. Not a super press fit. And then I'll weld on retainers on the outside like they did here. See, that one's actually about to come out. Basically what they did is they just welded on like a thick washer on the inside so that the pin is retained and it can't go out either way. See, they got like a kind of like a washer there that they just welded to the pin. So I'll do the same thing for the pin that I put in the next one actually, and then I'll do the same thing when I put this master link back. So not exactly the best fix, but it'll definitely work. So right now the goal is to get 3 links off of the other track without ruining them, and we also have to change the shoes out, and then we have to basically put it back together in a way where we can put the new shoes back on those links, and it should be a couple hours. Alright, so in my pile of parts over here, which looks very junky, but it's going to save me a lot of time and money right now, I have not 1, but 2 tracks to take some links from. So, this track is actually in much better condition. The chain and the shoes are in much better condition than the one that I have on there. One day maybe I'll swap them out, but the shoes are like 3 or 4 inches longer, so it's going to be a lot of work to do that. But nevertheless, now that I know this, I'm not going to sell these. They were for sale, but not anymore. So I need 3 of these, so I'm going to cut it on the 4th one. But first I got to get the shoe out of there.
big impact doesn't go this small, does it? It's 15, 16. I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so on this assembly here, I'm going to try to surgically remove this outer part. This is part of the link that I cut off. I'd like to save the pin if I could, so I'm going to make a cut right here and then spin it around and get one on the other side, and hopefully I can crack that loose on both of these, and then that way I can save the pin, and then we're kind of home free from there.
Oh, I have a torch. Like a real man.
Not a scratch on anything.
So that's the only part that it presses into?
Actually, watch
it's
this.
Loose on the pin, right?
Actually, watch this.
I'm watching. I saw.
That pin is in so much better shape than the one that came off there.
Doesn't look like there's very much wear on that at all. Loose from it. Yeah, there you go. Well, ow. Well, that came right out. Perfect.
So the problem with making a master link out of something that wasn't a master link is the fact that this pipe right here sticks out past the chain or the link. And so on the master link, what you have is a spacer there, because you can't get this inside of the other link with this on here. They press it together in the factory. So for the master link, you have this spacer on both sides. So right now, we're having to cut these off, or at least one. Maybe we can fit it in there. We're just cutting the one off and using that as a spacer. So we're just cutting it off with a grinder. And then the piece that we cut off will be the new spacer that we'll put in there. And hopefully that works. Oh, I know it'll work, but hopefully it works with just the one side. Then we don't have to cut the other. Alright, so it wouldn't quite fit in there, so we had to cut the other side off too. But now it'll fit in there, and we'll put those spacers in before we put it in. I also didn't like how worn these other pins were. That pin, it's got like a 1/16 or more of play, and also the master link also has that amount of play as well, which that's the master pin right there. And this thing is just, even on the ends where it's bigger diameter, still. So I went and grabbed another pin, so we have 2 pins that are good fitting in there. So actually gonna have to probably press that into there, but that's how it should be. I might just put these on the lathe and just barely take off like a thou or two. Okay, so I turned these down like a thou or two on the lathe. So now, hopefully, they should be alright. Put the spacers in there.
Called it.
Alright, so tomorrow morning we can load this up, bring it over to the job site. I'll bring my welder and I'll weld those pins in place for the master. And the reason I'm doing it like that instead of welding it together on the spot is because it's much easier to put this track in place the way it is before you link it up. Once you link it up, you can still get it, but it's so much more of a pain. It's like a 5-minute job to put this track on if it's split apart. All right, so we got a nice little area cleared out behind this pile of dirt and behind the pile of brush. Now I would like to get rid of the brush and rid of the dirt. So I just did some scouting and I found a place where I want to put all this stuff that's not too far of a haul from here. So there's like a gully right here, and I don't think this is going to be used for anything because on that side there's just a giant pile of rocks, and I'm not interested in dismantling those rocks to get that little bit of square footage. On this side there's a pretty steep hill, so yeah, I guess we could fill it in with dirt and have it usable land, but there's plenty of other places that we could do that too. So I think we're gonna get rid of all the brush right here. Put all the brush right in this area because it's a pretty low spot here. And that's the property line right there. So we're just gonna put it right up to the property line and just stack it up as tall as we can. So let's just go ahead and clear this spot just very quickly, just so that we're not hitting trees while we're swinging. But we don't need to clear it. We're just kind of knocking things down real quick, and then we'll bring all the brush over here. So look at that, that brush pile is totally gone. Just got a few spare logs to move over there. And the way that we stacked all the brush over there takes up a quarter of the room that it did before. Just because all of the stuff that we're putting over there is parallel with the excavator instead of perpendicular or wherever it may be. We just have this to move over, and then it'll look a lot better. So I'm gonna move those piles one more time. I didn't really have any room to put it anywhere before, but I had to get it out of the way. Now I have the room to put it somewhere, and it's gonna be its final resting place. So right behind the excavator is where it's gonna go. All right, well, we just added about a third to our workspace here. So we got a lot more room to move around. Plus we got a nice organized brush pile over there. So now what I'd like to do is clean up this area here. So there's just a lot of branches and brush, a lot of dead tree debris. And remember, the house is gonna go right there. So it's almost the end of the day, but I figured we could just do this nice little quick and easy job, which is just basically just clean this whole area up here, push down these small little trees, that big dead tree right there, and just in general, just get this stuff out of here. Because now we're running 150 feet to bring this brush over to the brush pile, so it will take longer. But at least we have a brush pile that we can bring it to, and that brush pile can receive massive amounts more. There's plenty of room over there. We've been stacking it up nice and neat. So anyways, let's just finish this up before the end of the day, and then next week we'll come in and probably take down some bigger stuff. So while it would be satisfying to grade this area out, we're going to be dropping a lot more trees here, so there's no point in doing that because then we just have to do it all over again. So at this point, what I'd like to do before I tackle all these big pine trees right here, what I'd like to do is move that pile of logs one last time. I'm working on an area right behind that excavator that I'd like to stack all the logs. It's right at the border of the property. I don't see anything else that we're going to be doing over there, so that it can stay there until they get shipped out. So I got to take down a few of those big trees right behind the skid steer right now. So I got to do that first, and then we'll move all these logs over there because that's right where the house is going to go. So I need to move those. And I actually think that the most efficient way to move logs like that is with forks on a skid steer. Unless you're moving them like onto a trailer or something. But if you're moving them any kind of distance at all, like 20 feet or more, then really even the grapple is not that efficient. The forks on the skid steer are efficient, but I don't have those today, so we're just gonna make do with what we got, which is probably just gonna be this machine right here. You know, when you grab them with the thumb, it works really good, but it also tears them up. So it is efficient to do that, but at the same time, if you're using them to mill, then it's not that great. But I got so many logs and I have so many more that I'm not too worried about it. And there's a bunch of trees back here that I wasn't even gonna take down. Actually, all of these I wasn't gonna take down. But I want to take them down now because that'll open up this whole area to be able to stack the logs and not be in the way of anything. Also, this is the north side of the property, and I did talk to the customer about solar. So if he was going to have solar, which he probably will eventually, this would be the side to put the solar panels on because that is the south side, which that's where the sun goes like this. So this would definitely be the place for the solar panels. I mean, we missed the skid steer by a good 6 feet. No problem. we're down to just kind of doing a rough grade here real quick, just from all the stump holes. We'll be finished here in a few hours with this part of the project. So I had to make another brush pile right behind that excavator over there because the other one is absolutely full. It's going to be impeding on the work area soon. So I had to just start another one over here. It's not going to be very big. And this one will probably be the first one to be burned if they decide to ever burn them. But we got a pretty rough area here, so let's just do the cut and fill, pull out any excess roots, and get this thing wrapped up. Alright, so just for reference, right where those machines are is about where the house is going to go. That's about the width. And then the depth. You guys will see in the next couple of videos. I don't need to explain. We got like a 200 by 200 area here, which is about an acre. And, you know, some guys can clear an acre in like a day, but not with very big old growth trees that you have to get rid of. Especially pine trees, they make a lot of mess. So cleanup was 80% of the work. You basically spend 20% knocking down trees and grading out a little bit. The other 80% is just cleaning everything up, finding a home for it. That brush pile right there is about the footprint of my garage, so 40 by 60, and it's about 12 feet tall too, so almost the inside height of my garage. I'm sure it's not going to show up on camera that well because it never does, but that is a massive amount of brush and stumps and stuff. Like, that's over twice the footprint of my house. And then these logs, this is at least 50 feet to the end, and they're at least 16 feet wide. Some of them are up to 20, 22 feet wide. It's about, well, I'm right here, so you could call this 8 feet tall. So just think about that. 50, probably 60 feet long, 20 feet wide, let's say, and 8 feet tall of all logs. And that's all just from 1 acre. So if you hear somebody say, oh, it's just only 1 acre, you can clear that in a day. Yeah, try doing that. Not gonna happen. But cutting up these logs and stacking them up here was a very small percentage of the work. A lot of the work is in that pile right there. And this is like a small pile that I started of firewood, but it's not even enough to warrant bringing it somewheres. Somebody might give you like $100 for it, but it's a lot of work to get it to them. So that may just be added to the brush piles. I'm not really sure. So overall, there was about probably close to 10 trees that I didn't anticipate taking out, but I did anyways as a favor to the customer. Part of the reason is because I'm going to take all these logs, which I know normally you just take them for free. You don't normally pay to take them. But I got a log cabin that I'm going to be building, at least one log cabin. So I could definitely use these. I'm buying a log molder to make D-logs so that they're like perfect logs. So I could definitely use these coming up. But this will build like 3 log cabins right here. So I don't know if I am going to use it in time. Plus I still have probably about that much, like from there over, on the job site still, and then I have about that much at least in my field. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I gotta like hire somebody to just sawmill full-time for me. I could use the wood between this house and the other house that I'm building, and then up in the Adirondacks I'm gonna be building a cabin. I could use the wood on those projects, but it's just so hard to find time to mill up everything that I need. And then you got to stack it somewhere where it doesn't get ruined. But that's something I would definitely like to find time for coming up soon. Instead of spending the whole winter in my garage fixing stuff, I'd actually like to switch it up and take care of some of this stuff that I've wanted to do for a while. But anyways, the next video on this project is going to be widening the driveway at the beginning. There's going to be a guy coming tomorrow to take down a couple of trees that are right next to the road, which I don't feel comfortable taking down. As soon as he's done with that, we'll come back and we will widen that driveway along with some other work down there. And that will be the 3rd video on the site work for this project. And then the 4th video for the site work on this project will be digging for the foundation, which we will do immediately after that. And then after we're done with the site work here, completely done, we're going to go away for a while. We're going to build the house on the other property, the spec house. We're going to frame it up, close it in, weatherize it, and then we'll be back here to do the exact same thing here, except we need to start out with a foundation. So I got a busy schedule ahead of me, and I have many other projects I'm doing on top of that. So I will see you guys in those videos.